right. Let's get her going. Welcome back to the Devil's Rink Report, guys. It's been a little while, guys. It's been a little while, and as you can see, some new bells and whistles here. All right. So if you got, if you see any snags in the production for a moment, just bear with us. We're testing some new things. Producer Sean in the background got me looking nice and crispy up on this screen. I mean, this looks fantastic. So appreciate producer Sean for all these new bells and whistles. And if anything happens during the stream, don't be afraid to just drop it in the comment section here. Be sure, by the way, to subscribe so you can be part of the chat, the subscribers only chat we got going here. And guys, start leaving your comments for the rest of the stream because we're gonna get to the subscriber part of the channel with the channel questions, chat questions. So actually, one thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna ask Sean in the background to lower himself a little bit because I hear me. All good, Sean, all good. But if you can, yes, certainly hit that subscribe button and start leaving your questions in the chat so that weeks since we've streamed, right? Been a few weeks since we've been here, and a lot has happened. A lot has happened, right? The only notable thing that has happened for the Devils so far has been, some changes to the management, right? Some changes to the management staff and some obviously, we talked about Sonny Mehta when he was brought in, right? But he has a new assistant, Mr. Braden Birch, comes over from the Florida Panthers, and now the search is on for some new associate coaches because we know some guys were let go of Sheldon Keefe's staff. Sheldon Keefe is safe. Jeremy Colleton is safe. But others are no longer with the coaching staff. Sergey Brylin remains as part of the coaching staff, but Dave Rogalski does not. Sergey Brylin remains with the Devils, not with the coaching staff. So there are searches open for those two positions right now, well underway for weeks at a time. But a lot of other things have happened between now and then. The Stanley Cup Finals right now, right? The Carolina Hurricanes, plug your ears, Devils fans, are up in the series 3-2 going into Game 6 back in Vegas. So I think we're back. Yeah, we're back, baby. Let's go. All right. I'm going to put out a quick tweet here for anybody who might not be in the room any longer. And we are live again. Apologies. for the tech issue. Join us. It is indeed the off season, guys. We're working out some kinks here. We're working out some bells and whistles. Everything is okay. We're back up and running. We're talking Devils hockey, kind of, right? There's like not a ton of Devils hockey to talk in terms of on ice stuff, right? But there's a lot of off ice things happening in recent weeks. First of all, starting with let's start with what's happened in the world of I guess the trade market, right? We'll call it that, the trade market. The Dylan Larkin saga has blown the doors open on the NHL trade market, the NHL trade front this recently. And the thing is, a lot of Devils fans, as soon as they heard the news that Dylan Larkin has requested a trade from the Detroit Red Wings, had said, the Devils are a match. And I could understand that. I think so too. The Devils are a match, but you know, there's only ways that they can go about it. But first we have to recognize, right? The report, which was, again, a bomb by Elliot Friedman, said that he wants out of Detroit after 11 seasons, which is crazy to think about, right? He's a Michigan guy, right? He grew up there, he went to college there, and then he was drafted there, and he was named the team captain. So it is pretty crazy to see Dylan Larkin has decided that he is done in Detroit as their captain after season of inability to, get over the hump, make the playoffs. And he wants to go somewhere to win. On average, he's a 28 goal, 65-point guy. He's certainly a first line center in the NHL. Is he a first line center on a Stanley Cup contending team? Perhaps not. You did see that Dylan Larkin was a big part of the Team USA gold medal winning team this year. But was he a 1C there? No, he certainly wasn't, right? So he's certainly a first line center in the NHL. But is he a first line center on a championship caliber team? Probably not. He comes with an AAV of $8.7 million, a full no move clause. So he has full control of his destiny and where he might go in the future. And then he has a 10-team trade list later in that deal. But right now it's full no move. The three teams he gave on his list caused a big ruckus. Because it kind of feels like all this power has shifted to the players, which is absolutely true, right? We've seen it happen in recent transactions with Quinn Hughes. He wanted to be moved, and he got moved to the Minnesota Wild. It was one of the teams he was willing to go to after he learned the Devils weren't going to be that team. He then decided, yeah, Minnesota's going to be that team. We saw it with Matthew Tkachuk, who said, I'm not staying in Calgary. I want to go to Florida. And he made his way down to Florida. And you're starting to hear some buzz about, like, could Zach Werenski be the next guy to ask for, a trade? Up in Edmonton, Darnell Nurse has asked for a trade. He thinks it's time to move on to another team. But right now the focus is Dylan Larkin, who decided Florida, Minnesota, or Vegas are the teams he's willing to say he will go to. Now, it's important to note that obviously Steve Yzerman has gone back to Dylan Larkin and said, listen, you're going to have to expand this list because you're putting me in a bit of a bind. And we don't know what those expanded teams are going to be. Elliot Friedman, by the way, did report that he had heard different teams other than the ones that were initially reported, but didn't say that he believes that report initially was inaccurate. He just said he had heard other teams. So perhaps there are more than just the three. Is New Jersey one of the teams on that list? Look, by the process of elimination here, you look at the teams who are on the board: Minnesota, Florida, and it's Minnesota, Florida, and the Vegas Golden Knights. Well, one of those teams is in the Stanley Cup final. One of those teams was in the playoffs, and one of those teams just recently won back-to-back championships. So you could see why, those are the destinations that Dylan Larkin has chosen. Is Dylan Larkin going to um look at Florida and say they're not a championship team. No, they missed their number one center all season. They missed Matthew Tkachuk for half the season, and he's looking at that team and saying, "Yeah, that's a team I can go to and win. That's a team that I can go to and help make better." So certainly that's why he put Florida on their list. Now, does he look at the Devils and say that's a team that I can go to and help win? I would imagine that he thinks that yes, he could go there and help them be better, but does he trust that they are going to win? I don't know. I don't know that that's the case because obviously, they had that magical run in 2022, 23. Then every year on and off since, they didn't necessarily, make all that much noise. They would make the playoffs, first round exit, after that season, or miss completely. So, the thing is they do have the Jack Hughes connection there. Dylan Larkin and the Hughes family have a good relationship. But it is also notable that he is very, very good friends with Quinn Hughes. So it does feel like Minnesota should be a favorite, although there have been a lot of reports that, the Minnesota Wild might not have what it takes to trade for Dylan Larkin. So he's cost controlled for the next 5 seasons. Again, a capable first line center. Is he a championship caliber first line center? Probably not. Multiple 30-goal seasons under his belt, 30-goal plus seasons. He's an immediate top 6 ad, right? And my thing is, if you're acquiring a Dylan Larkin for the New Jersey Devils, that means you're moving Jack Hughes to the wing, right? He's not going to usurp the role that Nico Hischier is going to take, which we're going to talk about Nico Hischier and his contract in a little while. He's not going to center that line, right? He could center a line with Jesper Bratt and player X. We could talk about that as well. Who might that be? But certainly, no, he is not going to usurp the role that is taken by Nico Hischier. One of the things I think about that though is like, look, you're going back to Jack Hughes and you're saying like, look, would you play this role as a winger if we acquire a Dylan Larkin? Would you play on the wing? And you're essentially getting a Patrick Kane 2.0 reincarnation right there, first of all. And second of all, you're immediately improving, in my opinion, the center position that way, just because Dylan Larkin is a lot better in the faceoff dot than Jack Hughes is, right? All other aspects, no, Jack Hughes is a better player than Dylan Larkin, but in the faceoff dot, Dylan Larkin takes the cake. He's got like a 52 to 55% face-off win percentage in his career, right? It varies over there. So, that's what I think is that, if you bring Dylan Larkin in, it's because you're moving Jack Hughes to the wing. Is it likely to happen? I don't think it's likely. Do I think Sonny Mehta has picked up the phone and, tried to inquire and see what it would take? I do. I do. So what would it take? I mean, if Yzerman trades Larkin, he's not going to give him away. Would Nico Hischier be part of that package? No, he would not be part of that package because I am of the belief that Nico Hischier is going to re-sign with the Devils on July 1st. Could that be something that they explore had they learned that Nico Hischier was going to decide I'm gonna take my career elsewhere and I'm done with the Devils? Of course, but that is not the impression that I get. So I don't think it will happen. And the thing is too, you're downgrading a player. Nico Hischier is by all accounts a better player than Dylan Larkin. Similar point production, similar goal production, better in the faceoff dot, better in the other two zones outside of the offensive zone. And he's 3 years younger. So you're losing that trade automatically, right? Now, if there are other assets coming in, perhaps, it's a bit more digestible, but overall, you're losing the best player in the deal, which is Nico Hischier. So, no, I don't think Nico Hischier is going to be part of a package that goes the other way for Dylan Larkin. One, and two, it's the main reason is because I think he's going to re-sign with the Devils this summer. If they go in a different direction, the Devils, right? Let's just say there is a phone call between Mehta and between Steve Yzerman, and for some reason the Devils are the best fit in terms of trade package, and Dylan Larkin expands his list, and he says, "Yeah, I'll go play with Jack Hughes." First and foremost, I think a guy that they're going to talk about is Dawson Mercer. The Detroit Red Wings are going to want young, desirable assets in return, right? And look, I know that there are a lot of Dawson Mercer fans out there, and I am just as much of a fan of the person as I am as you guys are. But in terms of a player, Dawson Mercer doesn't bring it enough for me, and there's enough of a sample size to prove that, right? He had the great year like everyone else did in 22-23, where he scored 27 goals and nearly 60 points. He has not been able to reach that level since. He doesn't drive a line. He's a passenger player, which is fine, but you're also not bringing the other responsibilities that a passenger player brings in scoring timely goals, or he does play well defensively, but not nearly as good as some people make it out to be, where they're saying he's this defensive stalwart. He's not. He's just an average, middle six player who is playing at a top six role. And look, perhaps he can have um a smaller role and maybe be a bit more successful in a season where the Devils are able to put him in the bottom six. I don't necessarily see him playing in a top six role, where he's an improvement over a guy like Dylan Larkin, where maybe his role in Detroit would be something that is essentially better for his style of play, right? Maybe he has a better, because he's not, Dawson Mercer is not going to outplay a Jack Hughes or a Nico Hischier. It's just not going to happen, right? So he's not going to get the minutes. He's not going to get the touches, and his role is going to be much different. Would the Devils include Arseny Gritsyuk in a deal for Dylan Larkin? I mean, I really only think that that would happen if they're desperate for Dylan Larkin, which I don't think that they are. I could see Lenny Hamanaho. I could see Simone Nemitz. I could see Seamus Casey. And I want to stress, by the way, this is not a package. This is, mix and match some of these assets however you will. Anton Silayev, I could see. The 12th overall pick, I could certainly see. These are all assets I could see be mix and match however you like to get the deal done for Dylan Larkin. Something like maybe Mercer, Seamus Casey, and the first. I think that's a done deal. I think the Devils do that no matter all day. I think that the Detroit Red Wings have to not take what they can get, but if because Dylan Larkin has this ability to say yes or no to where he wants to go, it's not like they're sitting there saying like we control this. They don't. It's Dylan Larkin who controls it. So with the lack of leverage, like the combinations to get the deal done, you can get it done with some of those players that we just mentioned. So we'll see. We'll see. I think that Yzerman's going to want to get this done quick. I don't know if it would get past the draft, but we'll see. Should the Devils pursue this? I ultimately with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, and I can see you watch the magic happen. That would be fun. That would certainly be fun. All right, let's talk about the Nico Hischier and Arseny Gritsyuk contract updates. So, first and foremost, we reported at New Jersey Hockey Now a couple weeks ago, or not even a couple weeks ago, last week. We reported that Gritsyuk was looking for a multi-year extension. They're hoping on his side to have more than a 2-year contract come through. The word is that both sides are encouraged by the negotiations. They see a light at the end of the tunnel, and something is going to get done soon. What is that AAV going to look like? We see the projections on AFP Analytics that say that on a 2-year or 3-year deal, I believe it was a 3-year projection they had him at. There was a long-term projection there as well. But the 2-year projection had him at 3 million, a bit over $3 million. So $3,045 for 2 years on a short-term contract. If they went longer term, 4 years, it's closer to 6. It's 5.9-ish, which again, percentage against the cap is only like 5.6%. It's actually a really good deal with the cap going up. So we'll see what direction that Sonny Mehta and the Devils go in, whether it's short or long term. It sounds like that Sonny Mehta is pushing for that bridge deal as opposed to the other side who is hoping for longer term, which I understand that from Sonny Mehta, right? It's a 1-year sample from a player who came over from the KHL, and albeit the underlying numbers look fantastic, right? He is certainly excellent in all three zones. He kind of drives play. He's sound defensively. He can score goals. He's got a wicked shot. You just want to see him, replicate that season. Um, and he does have that profile that he could end up being a top six forward at some point. So the bridge deal does make sense to me. If it were me, I would probably do a long-term extension, but I understand proceeding with caution and saying, let's do 2-3 years and see where we're at after that deal. Because you got to remember too, he's not, he's no spring chicken. He's 25. He's going into his age 25 season. So, proceeding with caution does make some sense to me. Nico Hischier contract. So, this was something that I wrote today, right? Obviously, for the past couple weeks, it's been speculated. What's the number for Nico Hischier? What's he going to come in at? Is it going to be, is it going to be an $11 million deal? Is it going to be more than that? Is it going to be, 12? Is it going to be, what's the number going to be? Well, yesterday, Kevin Weeks reports that he could see a quote unquote midterm contract for somewhere between 11 and 13 million dollars. Whoa, 11 and 13 million dollars. What are we even talking about here? Those are crazy numbers, right? Like those are more than what Sasha Barkov of the Florida Panthers makes. That's more than what Anze Kopitar made in his big extension in LA. Well, again, this is part of what I wrote today. You have to understand we're in unprecedented waters. So I get the initial shock. I get the initial pause on, whoa, $13 million for Nico Hischier. I mean, he hasn't even had, a 90-point season. What are we doing here? Well, again, look at, the rising cap and when that deal is going to kick in, right? That deal doesn't kick in on July 1st. He's got another year on his contract at $7.25 million. That deal kicks in on July 1st, 2027, when the salary cap jumps to, I believe, 113 million is the projection, if I'm not mistaken. Just looking at the projection here, yeah, $113.5 million. So what does that mean for the Devils in terms of the cap percentage? Well, again, at 11 and a half, let's argue that $11.5 million is where they settle, right? $11.5 million brings him to 10.1% of the cap in the first year of his extension. That's only going to decrease over time because in 2028, the cap is projected to jump $10 million to $123 million. That's going to decrease his cap hit to even lower than that at 9.5%. So you have to understand when these negotiations are going down, the agents are bringing to the table, hey, we're not talking dollars here. We're talking percentage of the cap. And that is where the numbers lie for Nico Hischier. So if you're talking 10% of the cap, 9.5% of the cap, and as the years go on, that deal gets, smaller against the cap, that's actually a pretty good deal, right? Let's say it's an 8-year deal at 11.5 million. Great. If it's shorter term, you're talking maybe 12 and a half million, and again, that's going to be 11% of the cap, maybe 12% of the cap, but it's only again going to decrease over time. And in comparison to, what some of these other players got, well, Barkov, when he signed that $10 million average annual deal, when I think it was 4 years ago, that was 12.12% of the cap. When Kopitar signed his 8-year contract in 2016, it was a whopping 13.7% against the cap. So you're looking at similar player comps, and then you're looking at Nico Hischier, and you're saying, okay, well, his percentage of the cap is going to be smaller than what Nico Hischier's is potentially going to be, because Nico Hischier, although is cut from the same cloth, he's not as good as a Sasha Barkov, right? He's maybe not as good as an Anze Kopitar. He's on, he's up there, but he's not as good as those players. So coming in a little bit beneath those two certainly makes sense. And again, percentage of the cap, like you're locking up one of your core pieces in his prime for about that percentage that you want. So again, it's jarring to see these numbers: 13 million, 12 million for Nico Hischier. What are we talking about? Well, it makes a bit of sense when you break it down and you look at the percentage of the cap and you say, okay, that that checks out, right? So, and look, he's the captain, right? He's the captain of the team for a reason, and say what you will about that, but there's a reason why he is the captain. Everybody in that locker room looks to him. He's one of the best 200-foot players in the league. There was nobody better than him in the faceoff dot this year. I mean, he was the only person to not only eclipse 900 faceoff wins, but 1,000 faceoff wins as well. He is one. He's the top 15 center in the league. He might even be top 10. And this is where the market is going. The numbers are going to get bigger. And although that's jarring, don't look at the raw value of the dollar. Understand how it's going to work against the cap. Okay. We're talking about cap percentage here. And that is why Nico Hischier could end up getting, that big payday. We'll see what happens. But moving on. So, and again, actually, before we move on, there had been some speculative talk about, oh, could Nico Hischier be traded? Look, I get the trade talk, right? Like we all talk about and write about rumors and what could happen and this, that, and the other thing. And look, the comment that he made to my question at the end of last season, like, I'm a Devil for now. We'll see what happens then. He kind of rescinded it, right? He was like, I love playing in New Jersey. I love being here. I love this team. He said that later on at exit interviews. So, he did rescind that a bit. And look, he's a loyal guy. I don't see him, wanting to lead the Devils just yet. They're about to, like Sonny Mehta said, they're on the precipice of something great here. And I think he's right. He's got to make the right moves this summer. The new Devils GM, but the Devils are on the precipice of something great. And I think Nico Hischier sees that and he wants to be part of that. He got a taste, right? And perhaps that's the reason for, Weeks's mid-term contract report. We'll see if that, turns out to be true. I think, Kevin Weeks is pretty plugged in. I don't think that that's I don't think that's inaccurate by any means. I think it's an option. I don't think it's the only option. But we'll see. Again, from what I've gathered from my conversations, the word is Nico Hischier and his camp are encouraged by the contract negotiations. So is the Devils side of things in terms of those contract negotiations. So all of this talk, this speculation, oh, Montreal could be interested. Oh, this team could be interested. Yeah, of course they could be interested. It's Nico Hischier we're talking about here. We're not talking about, some bottom six player who's about to become an unrestricted free agent. No, we're talking about one of the best centers in the league. So of course, all these teams are going to be interested, keeping an eye on is one of the best centers in the NHL. Who, by the way, that is probably the least available position in the league. Going to become available? Yeah, of course. A GM would not be doing his job if he wasn't paying attention to that. Of all these teams, paying attention should not come as a surprise. But does that mean that Nico Hischier is leaving the Devils? No. It does not. And I think he will be here for at least the next 4 seasons, if not more. We'll see if that mid-year contract extension or max contract extension happen. Either way, I would not worry about Nico Hischier going somewhere else. All right, moving on to Anton Silayev, who has signed his entry-level contract. That was about a week ago, maybe a little bit more. And I don't have a ton to say on this. I actually will have more to say on the next show because, and I didn't even tell Sean this yet, but I'm going to be sitting down with a couple of folks from the Devil scouting department and just getting some insight on Anton Silayev and some of his development and what's going on with their plans for him and how they see him and everything like that. So we're going to get some answers on Anton Silayev soon. I believe that's going to come down Monday or Tuesday. So be sure to watch, out for that article early in the week next week. We'll talk about it on Devil's Rink Report as well. Unsure if it'll be a live video or if I'll just do a pre-record. Producer Sean and I will talk about that. But there's going to be more coming on Anton Silayev from myself via New Jersey Hockey Now and Devil's Rink Report in the coming days. But yes, Anton Silayev ultimately signs his entry-level contract, and I think the Devils are very excited about that because, look, I get it. Like, Silayev was a prospect who, saw his ice time decrease over in the KHL, and that's not ideal. He wasn't playing big minutes, and the best thing for his development was for him to play, a bigger role, as the years went on, and that didn't happen, right? But look, things over in the KHL, they happen in very precarious ways, right? We saw this with Matvei Michkov, and that's the reason why they expedited his import to the Philadelphia Flyers in North America, right? Matvei Michkov was not playing top minutes with his team over in the KHL, and they got him over to Philly as soon as possible. He had a great rookie season. The sophomore campaign was not as good, but again, we're talking about 19-year-olds here. We're talking about 20-year-olds here, right? I know a lot of us are concerned with the development of Anton Silayev. Anytime you can get a 6 foot, I got to look up how tall he is. I forget if it's 6'4" or if it's more. But I believe, I mean, anytime you can get a he's 6'5". Anytime you get a 6'5" behemoth who knows how to skate, not just forwards, but also backwards, um, you take him. And I know, and we're gonna get answers to this too. But I know that a lot of us were worried about, oh, they only took him on a whim. They didn't know anything about him. They just took him because he's big, and it was between him and Constance Helenius, who went to Buffalo. And look, he's showing well in Buffalo too, right? I get that. I do. I get that. But the Devils took him for a reason. They think he's going to be a cornerstone on the blue line for a long, long time. We're talking, I think, the way I see it, he could turn out to be Chara like. I'm not saying he's gonna be Zdeno Chara. So don't clip this and put it out there and says James Nichols says Anton Silayev is Zdeno Chara, but I think he could be Chara like, which is important for this Devils blue line, right? You look at who they have right now, it's largely built around Luke Hughes. We'll see what happens with Simone Nemitz, but if he extends, you're talking about two puck moving defensemen with offensive upside. You have Dougie Hamilton, who's there, and somebody's going to have to step in for when Brennan Dillon is gone because he's got 1 year left on his deal. Brett Pesce is another guy who's kind of a two-way, but more defensive specialist. Jonathan Kovacevic, right? But the Devils need a prospect in the pipeline, a young defenseman in the pipeline like Silayev, who's going to be defensive-minded and build his game to be a stalwart on the blue line defensively. And I think that's the pedigree that they believe that he has. Again, we'll get more answers on him in the coming days. I'm going to be talking to some people in the Devils organization about him and their plans and such. But I think that there's more reason to be excited that Anton Silayev has signed his entry level contract, whether that means that he plays for the Devils at some point or they use him to get an improvement more immediately. I think I see him more developing within the Devils organization as opposed to being moved. I mean, unless it's something that they just can't refuse. But time will tell with Anton Silayev. We're gonna know soon, though. I mean, September is around the corner. I know it just June is here. We're only midway through June, and it's just starting to finally get hot and everything. I'm telling you, you guys are gonna blink, and we're gonna be in September, and we're gonna be back at training camp, and season starts sooner this year. The 84 game schedule is upon us. And the regular season will begin not in October any longer. It's September now. So all these answers, they're coming soon. And we should all be excited about that for sure. Okay, so with that though, the offseason is coming, right? The draft is going to come and go. We will see what happens at the draft. Are they going to use the 12th overall pick, or are they going to use it in terms of a trade, right? Are they going to make some sort of move here with the 12th overall pick? If you're asking me right now, I would think, I haven't spoken to Sonny Mehta about it yet. I do have plans to speak to him soon. But I would think that the idea for the Devils, which should have happened last year and didn't, and we'll see what happens this year. I think the idea should be that the Devils trade their first round pick this year. They need more immediate help right away, because one of the things that they need, which is not going to be available to them in the free agent market unless Tuck gets there and they're in the Tuck mix. But do you really want to pay $10 million plus for Alex Tuck? I'm not so sure. There are options out there for the Devils. One of those big swings could be, and I've been an advocate for Matthew Knies. I know not a lot of people are super happy with his game. I know a lot of people looked at his 2025-26 and said he only had 23 goals. I look at the overall bigger sample of things and how the Toronto Maple Leafs just struggled mightily as a team. They obviously didn't have Mitch Marner. That hurt them. So the playmaker that was there for Matthew Knies in the season prior when he almost scored 30 goals, he didn't have that available to him. He had William Nylander, sure, but it wasn't, he's not Mitch Marner. Like, we're seeing what Mitch Marner can do outside of Toronto, and it's just been excellent for the Vegas Golden Knights. He hasn't done that, or he couldn't do that without Mitch Marner, I don't think. But guess what? The New Jersey Devils, they need a top line winger for Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, and that's like having two Mitch Marners on one line for Matthew Nye. So I do think that he would eat up on that line for sure. Look, there's no one right answer, right? Do the Devils go out and get a hulking, winger who can skate and play net front and clean up the garbage? Sure, they could do that. That's one answer. But I also think that there's another answer in saying, like, do they get another guy who could play the wing with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt who complements, the speed and skill of this team? I think that's an option too. I don't think there's one right answer, because you can fill out the rest of your lineup with other needs, like maybe a more physical forward, if it's in free agency, or if it's, through another smaller trade or something like that, right? So Matthew Nyes is one guy who I think the Devils could or should explore. I believe they already did, when the trade deadline happened, and Simone Nemitz's name was out there and they were dangling him. I think that is one guy that they were certainly interested in. Another guy who, look, I didn't think that this was going to be possible. I did think that Dallas was going to lock him down, but as the days go on, it's looking more and more bleak that Jason Robertson is going to sign in Dallas. I believe Jeff Marek even said, our friend of the show, a couple days ago, that it's looking increasingly more difficult to make that happen. Now, the reason for that is because of the ask for this contract, right? I think it's going to be similar to something like Nico Hischier's number, 12, $13 million. Can the Dallas Stars make that happen? They're not sure. They don't have the cap room, and another guy who's a restricted free agent in Dallas is Maverick Bourque, and he's not Jason Robertson, but they think he's going to be just as important to the organization, and they do want to keep him. So you wonder, does Jason Robertson shake loose in Dallas? And look, that's another guy, of course, that would be one of the best acquisitions the Devils could make this summer. He was just named first team all-star for the season earlier today, and rightfully so for scoring. Was it for another 40-goal season? And I get it. He had the Team USA snub from the Olympics this year, but again, 45 goals, 96 points. I mean, you put that on Jack Hughes's line. He's 100-point player. I mean, he's done it before, right? He's kind of a driver himself. But yeah, you could see why the Devils would certainly be interested in a Jason Robertson. I think everybody would be interested in a Jason Robertson. But certainly that's a big swing that they could go for, right? But outside of Robertson, outside of Matthew Nyes, I wrote about yesterday, Jordan Kyrou. He's a realistic Devils trade target. And I'll say this, he is also in full control of his destiny, right? He has a full no move clause. But the reason why I think that he's a viable option for the Devils is because one of the teams that is reported on his okay list, or they believe is on his okay list, is the New York Islanders. And although the Devils are not the New York Islanders, they're not that far in terms of destination. And I do think the Devils, in terms of readiness, I think the Devils are better suited to be more successful longer term in the more immediate future than the Islanders, right? Yeah, of course, the Islanders have Matthew Schaefer and Ilya Sorokin, and those are two cornerstone pieces. But the Devils have, Jack Hughes, Luke Hughes. They have all these other complementary pieces: Nico Hischier, Timo Meyer. These are players who are ready to win right now. And I think that, a Jordan Kyrou should not look at the Devils and say, that's not a team I would go to. I think he should look at them and say, that's a team that I think is on the precipice. Especially with Sonny Mehta now in charge. I know a lot of players around the league know that he's a very smart man and respect him in that aspect. So I do believe that there is excitement from for him from the Devils players, but also players on the outside of the organization that look in and say, wow, that's a really big hire. So I think Jordan Kyrou is certainly, a guy who would be a solution for the top line. Again, a different kind of player than a Matthew Nyes per se, right? Matthew Nyes is going to score by winning net front battles and, banging for Bratt. He's had 30 plus goal seasons multiple times. And he's scored close to 35. He's scored close to 40 goals before. So I do think Jordan Kyrou is another player that the Devils should certainly look into. Um, Other players on the rumor mill. I don't quite get the Matthew Barzal thing. The word is that the Islanders are looking to free up some money and get a little bit younger. I could see that, right? Because they have Schaefer there, and they have guys like Victor Eklund, and they have other players like Kayshawn Atchison and Cole Iserman, and maybe that's the new core for them. I certainly understand that. Anders Lee is a guy who they're not sure, is he coming or going? They're trying to figure out, the term and dollar aspect there. But Matthew Barzell's name does surprise me. He's got, a longer term contract at about 9 million. Would he be a fit for the for the Devils? Yeah, sure. But I mean, he kind of brings more of the same, right? He's not the finisher that they need. He's the same as, Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt in that sense. And maybe if you're putting him on a different line, maybe if you're putting him with Nico Hischier's line with Meyer, and removing Dawson Mercer from the situation, that's more of the solution that you're looking for. But he wouldn't be the first guy on my list that I'm going after, right? Is he an upgrade? Absolutely. Is he the first guy on the list? No, because one of the first guys that should be on the list is Pavel Dorofeyev. I understand he's not having the best Stanley Cup final right now, but I mean, he is a player that is, I mean, clearly a goal scorer. He has multiple 30 goal seasons under his belt, right? He is certainly a diamond that they found in the rough because they didn't think he was going to be this good. Um, he is currently playing on a bargain contract at $1.835 million. But he has multiple 35 goals last season, 37 goals this season. And in the playoffs, I mean, he's brought the same goal production, scoring 12 goals in 21 playoff games this year. I mean, that's insane. So the Vegas Golden Knights don't have much cap room at all. He is an offer sheet candidate, um, but he's also due for a big raise. And is he going to make it to, or sorry, are the Vegas Golden Knights going to be able to re-sign him? Well, his cap projections, short term, 2-year contract, $6 million, long term, $8 million. Um, those are numbers that the Devils could find the money for. Those are numbers that the Vegas Golden Knights might have a hard time finding. You look at Jack Eichel's $13 million contract kicks in. Mitch Marner's $12 million contract is active. Mark Stone, $9.5 million. Thomas Hurdle, another 4 seasons at $6.75 million. You take a look at the blue line. Petrangelo is still on the books for 8.8. Shea Weber, 7.425. So it becomes difficult for the Vegas Golden Knights to find money. And look, I know it's the Vegas Golden Knights, they always find a way. But if Sonny Mehta wanted to be aggressive and he wanted to force their hand, I mean, he can offer sheet them. He could try to do that. Or, he could certainly try and pull off a deal there. Perhaps, get them a little bit younger, give them some NHL proven assets like a Dawson Mercer, who, makes $4 million and fits under that $4 million cap space that they have, or something like that. Now, I'm not saying Dawson Mercer for Pavel Dorofeyev straight up. Obviously, that's not going to work. But, there could be a deal that happens there, right? Um, and lastly, this is Sean's suggestion, and I'd have to look into this, Sean. I think this is actually an interesting one. Alex Laferriere from the Los Angeles Kings, and he says a 1-for-1 trade for Dawson Mercer. And if I'm not mistaken, I did see Alex Laferriere's numbers. At the end of the season, I was a bit surprised. I didn't realize he had this good of a season because, again, he plays on the West Coast. He plays for the Kings. I know he's a dangerous scorer, but he had 21 goals in 82 games this year and 44 points. I think that's really good production for a guy like Alex Laferriere. And I know he's a different kind of player than Dawson Mercer, right? He's a bit more agile. He's a bit more of an overall offensive player, whereas Dawson Mercer's a two-way guy, and Laferriere can actually play drive a little bit better than Dawson Mercer. So, Sean notes here he's a Chatham, New Jersey native, and that's always something that helps, right? Always something that Devils fans like to see, bringing in their own. We saw it with Sonny Mehta, right? Sonny Mehta is a New Jersey native, so everybody likes it when everybody comes home to New Jersey. So you do wonder if maybe there could be something there for Laferriere, because again, the Los Angeles Kings, in a weird situation in their trajectory, right? They are losing Anze Kopitar. He has retired, but they brought in Artemi Panarin for 3 seasons, and now they've hired Peter Laviolette. But they're by no means a young team. They're more of an aging roster. Um, they have Kevin Fiala there. Adrian Kempe is 29. Fiala is 29. Quentin Byfield, he's 23. But Trevor Moore, 31. LaFerriere is going into his age 25 season. That would be the catch. But Trevor Moore, 31. Joel Armia, 33. Like these guys they're older. Um, even on the blue line, Drew Doughty, 36. Brian Dumoulin, we all know. These are older players. Cody Ceci, 32. Um, Older players over there. So, do they want to trade a young Alex Laferriere? Perhaps not, but I mean, at the same time, if they want younger assets, right? If they want guys to maybe build around for the future, maybe a Mercer is that kind of guy. Maybe a Simone Nemitz is that kind of guy, right? They're gonna want younger players in multiple younger players, and if it costs them one to gain multiple, yeah, I could see that happening. So that's an interesting choice, Sean. I do like that, and I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit for sure. But that ends the notes portion of our episode today. Let's get into some chat questions that we have here. And again, this is a new type of stream here, guys, because we have new bells and whistles. That's why you saw the complication earlier in the show where we lost myself for a minute there, but we're back. We're all good here, and things look great, by the way. I mean, I don't think I've ever looked more high definition in my life. I think that the overlay looks great. I love all the graphics here. It looks awesome. And Sean did put in the chat earlier, major apologies, people. It's the off season for everyone, and we're working out some new stuff for the show. So we appreciate you bearing with us here, for sure. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say hit that subscribe button. Please like the video, and just support us as best as you can, because there's going to be so much more of this where this has come from. Show's not over, but I want to tell you what's ahead. Right, we're going to be doing a NHL draft for day one for sure. We're going to be doing a draft night show, maybe a reaction right after they take the pick, and or if they trade it, we'll certainly go live. And then we're going to also do a free agency show. We're still working out how that's going to look. Am I going to be live all day? That might be hard. I got to do a bunch of coverage on what's happening that day. But certainly at least a reaction show. Whether Sunny Mehta talks that day or not, I will have a show. We will have a show for you. And then, as the offseason develops, we're going to see, what comes next. But next season, make no mistake, things are ramping up. We've decided for sure that we are going to be doing post-game shows every night. So that's exciting, right? We're going to be doing those for sure. We're going to be doing breaking news podcasts as much as possible, or as much breaking news as there is. And again, just there's going to be a lot more content on this channel. So please hit that subscribe button, like the video. Be sure to stay here at Devils Rink Report for all your New Jersey Devils coverage. We are going to be your go-to podcast show and everything for reporting purposes on the Devils beat this year and going forward, honestly, all the time. But Sean, let's bring up a couple of chat questions, comments, concerns. I know it's the off season. Maybe people are out enjoying the humidity. It is disgustingly hot out today. But it is at least a sunny, nice day. So, but let's bring up a comment or two here. Sean, do we have any to share with the rest of the chat? From Captain THC, he says the Devils are not a match for Larkin, and no, trading Nico for him is not a good idea. Nico is 10 times better than Larkin in every way. Stop wasting your time babbling about Larkin. I would agree with the first part of that comment, right? I do think that Nico Hischier is in every way a better player than Dylan Larkin. However, it's not a waste of time to talk about, because if you can add a Dylan Larkin to the Devils currently, you're talking about a major upgrade, right? And I'm not saying that Dylan Larkin is a better player than Jack Hughes. Of course, he's not a better player than Jack Hughes, but in the faceoff dot, he's better than Jack Hughes, right? If you're moving Jack to the wing and you're essentially making him Patrick Kane 2.0, and you have Dylan Larkin at center, that's excellent stuff. You want to see that kind of thing happen. So I think that adding Dylan Larkin is a good idea if he ends up, for some reason, somehow, putting the Devils on his list. What it's going to cost, again, that is a conversation in its own. I don't think it's going to cost as much as everyone thinks it will, just because Dylan Larkin has a lot of say in how this is going to go. Um, but again, like if you could add a Dylan Larkin, you try it. But if he's not on the list, then he's not on the list. But it's not going to cost Nico Hischier. I do firmly believe Nico Hischier is going to sign an extension in New Jersey. What else we got here, Sean? We'll do one or two more. All right, we have. No, you're good. We have Devils fan _1 says, think we should be going after McTavish instead. More realistic to get. Package either Dougie or Nemec plus our first. So interesting that you said Dougie. I do have some research to do on that because I am trying to figure out what the situation is with him, right? We've spoken about this before. He hasn't been available since that, public comment was made by his agent that they thought he was being scratched to force a trade. Ultimately, that didn't happen. He remained and played a lot better. The Devils claim that that was the motive, right? They scratched him to try and get him to play better. And look, if that was the motive, it worked. But he hasn't been made available to talk since. So the fact of the matter is that one time they did say that they were open to more teams than the 10-team trade list. Dougie Hamilton has not spoken to Devils media or publicly since that happened. Does Sonny Mehta mend that relationship? Has he done it already? Working on those details for sure. So would we see Dougie Hamilton move this summer? I'm not sure at this point. We're gonna have to find out together. Maybe when I know, you'll know for sure as well. It's a possibility, but it does feel right now. I know we shut down here at New Jersey Hockey Now and on Devil's Rink Report. We shut down those Simone Nemec rumors. However, that does not mean that he won't be traded this summer, right? He didn't ask for a trade. He doesn't want to be traded because he doesn't want to be with the Devils anymore. He actually, in fact, did say at exit meetings he would love to re-sign in New Jersey. However, he's an asset. And is he an asset that by the numbers, by the analytics, Sonny Mehta sees as, a major part of the Devils moving forward? Maybe, maybe not. I do think that there is the possibility he could be moved this summer. And, would it be viable to do it for a guy like Mason McTavish? Well, I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't think a Nemec for a McTavish trade is the worst idea because you're getting a guy who has shown promise in Anaheim, albeit yes, it was a tough season for Mason McTavish this year. I don't think that he is a bad player though. I think that players have off seasons. He scored 17 goals and 41 points in 75 games. Okay. Well, last year he scored 22 goals and 52 points. And the season before that, he scored 19 goals and 23 points. 42 points. So, again, he's a center winger. He can kind of do both, right? It's if you get him, he's kind of helping your center core. If you move him to the wing, okay, that's fine too. By the way, he's another Swiss guy, so he can play with the rest of the Swiss guys on the Devils. But ultimately, again, he's got a really good cap hit at 7 million and change. It's not a huge commitment because I believe that contract is only a few years. Right? Did they do the 7x7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he's got 5 years left on his deal. So they did a 6-year contract on $7 million AAV term. But I think that, again, he's a guy that they talk about as a potential future captain. He's got two-way prowess. He's pretty good defensively. They think that he's got over in Anaheim, he's got clear offensive skills, perhaps a bit untapped. Is he a top 6 solution? I don't think so. I mean, at least not to start. Could he develop into one at 23 years old? I think that's possible. And look, like you saw what happened with Trevor Zegras, right? He moved from Anaheim as basically a replacement level player, and now in Philly, he's their top forward, perhaps. He might be. I think he led them in scoring this year, and if not, it was pretty close. Maybe it's their play style, right? And look, he didn't get to meaning Zegras. Zegras didn't get to play for Joel Quenneville. Um, He played for who was their coach last year? I forget who the coach was last year. But again, it was just one of those situations where Trevor Zegras needed a new environment, and it worked out really well for him. 26 goals, 67 points, 1 point behind the points leader in Philly, Travis Konechny with 68. I mean, you were talking about maybe a similar situation here for Mason McTavish, where he could find that prowess he had again last year, where he scored 23 goals and nearly 60 points. So McTavish for Nemitz, some sort of deal like that. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that's a horrible idea. Kind of helps improve your center depth if he's going to be a center winger type thing, whatever they need him to be on that day. But again, just another NHL proven guy who is not a liability on the ice defensively, who can bring chip in on offense. I think that's not the worst idea. So let's get another one here, Sean. One more here, and then a couple shout outs, says producer Sean. He makes the rules. I'm a talking head. This one is about Timo Meier, who I believe, listen, I get that Timo Meier has been a disappointment to some. And the fact of the matter is, and I was thinking about this a little bit the other day, Timo Meier is not going to be what he was on the San Jose Sharks. The comment comes from D0 Beats. He says, I honestly think Timo is a disappointment. And so look, the fact of the matter is that when the Devils acquired Timo Meier, he had that 40-goal season under his belt. And, midway through the year when he got traded, or at the trade deadline when he got traded from the Sharks to the Devils, he was on 35-goal pace, which he met. Is not 40 goals, so it's a bit of a decline, but it's still 35-goal season. And, that's something the Devils coveted then, and still do, honestly. The fact of the matter, though, is that when Timo Meier was in San Jose, he was the guy. He drove the play. He got more minutes, or not more, the most minutes as a forward, because when the Sharks needed him to, be out there at the end of the game to score a clutch goal, he was the guy that they turned to. In New Jersey, it's obviously Jack Hughes first, right? And then, it could be Nico Hischier, or it could be Jesper Bratt. He might be fourth on that list as one of the go-to guys who, are not going to be out there late in games and getting those bonus points, in those crucial moments. He's not going to get those increased minutes because there are other guys in the pecking order. He's one of those guys that they will turn to and try to, lean on and say, like, you're one of our best scorers, go out there and do the thing. But when push comes to shove and Jack Hughes is healthy and he's firing on all cylinders, it's going to be him every time. So that's part of the reason why Timo Meier is not scoring 40 goals like he used to, right? And he's not even reaching 30 right now with the Devils like he used to. However, the other issue that everyone knows and everyone talks about is that he's not on the first line or first unit power play. That is something that I've been adamant that they should certainly do. Put him in the right circle and just let him start ripping shots. Sorry, the left circle. Let him start ripping shots. I think that he has one of the better shots on the team. And look, if that shot doesn't go in, it's going to create rebound chances. I can't really understand what the hesitation has been there, because he's not going to be a facilitator on that unit. He's going to be the shooter. So it's not like they need him to drive the play. They just need him to stand in the circle and rip shots, kind of like how Alex Ovechkin does for the Washington Capitals. But that's one of the reasons why he's also not accruing as many points as he does. Look, everywhere else, Timo Meier is an important player for the Devils. I mean, he transitions the puck for that line. He kind of helps drive the line with the play there. And look, the second line overall with Nico Hischier and Dawson Mercer, it's a really good line. Could it be better? Of course, and I think that's probably something that they're going to try and do this summer. And maybe it'll come internally. Maybe Arseny Gritsyuk gets a crack there. Maybe they make him the left winger and they move Timo Meier over to the right. But I could understand the disappointment with Timo Meier, but I do think that his deployment has something to do with it. They need to get him on the first line power play or first unit power play. Maybe they need to try him over at right wing. I know he's had the chances, but it's certainly, I think deployment does play a factor here. And we'll see if they try something new next year. They know that's why they acquired him. He could be that guy. And I'm a big fan of Timo Meyer. I'm not gonna sit here and sugarcoat it, and say like, he hasn't been a disappointment. He has been, but I'm a big fan of Timo Meyer. I see the skills every day. Great point by Sean in the background talking to my ear. You might not hear him, but I do. He played excellent in the Olympics. He played excellent at the Worlds. He was one of the leading scorers. He has the talent clearly to be one of those guys. It's about deployment for me. Maybe there is something to him playing the right wing versus the left wing, which, by the way, Daniel Amoya, who is now working with me at New Jersey Hockey Now, is working on a piece about that. So that will be out soon. Be sure to check that out. But I think that he does need to maybe perhaps get a good look at right wing, right? Maybe it's more about Dawson Mercer being a right winger more than he is a left winger. Maybe that's why he doesn't get a crack at it. But I think that there should be a good look at Timo Meyer on the right wing next year, a good look at Timo Meyer on the first unit power play next year. And I think you're going to see a much different player, the player that you thought that we were getting in New Jersey back in, God, how many seasons ago was this now? 2023. So we'll see. But I think that's gonna wrap it up for us here today, guys. Thank you so much for the questions. Thank you so much for the participation. Thank you so much for being here on this random kind of Friday, June 12th edition of the Devil's Rink Report. This is season 2, guys. Season 2 is back. Or Devil's Rink Report is back. Season 2 is here. So again, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to Devil's Rink Report. Leave a like on the video. Leave a comment if you'd like. And if you don't have the notifications on, turn those on so that when we go live, if you didn't see one of our tweets, well, you're gonna get the notification anyway. Hey, we're live. Fresh year, fresh season, right? We got plenty more coming in terms of the draft, free agency, breaking news shows. So we're going to be doing all that stuff. And again, remember, after every game next year, we're going to be going live with post-game reactions and, talking to you guys about, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever happens throughout the season. We're going to be talking all year. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. Exciting things coming ahead for Devil's Rink Report. I mean, look at this layout. Look at this, all these new bells and whistles. I know we had that one little mishap earlier in the show where I dropped, but I came back. Look how great we look. So make sure you hit that subscribe, hit that like, and we'll see you guys next time on Devil's Rink Report.